Hello, welcome, listeners, zombie fans. This is Reanimated episode 104. I'm Stuart. I'm in the foggy Northern Californian wasteland, and coming at us from the desiccated ruins of New York City is H.A. Conrad. What's up?
I'm here. It's definitely desiccated.
Actually, Queens, right?
No, Brooklyn.
I knew that. I apologize.
Yeah, big difference. Big difference.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure the you know the cachet of
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn still outweighs Queens.
Yep.
But nonetheless, here we are today on this fine morning. We're going to talk about I Am Legend and Omega Man and I Am Legend,
Yep.
but not Last Man on Earth because fuck that guy.
Yeah.
No offense to the 1960 whatever movie with Vincent Price. I've just never seen it, and I didn't have time to watch 3 movies and read a book this week. So
No, I mean, I think I have seen only an excerpt of that, and it was more of a sort of a montage thing that was spliced together to Vincent Price. So that's the only real knowledge I have of that.
okay, well, we are going to dig into that in a short while. Our triple-headed review. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about the news. And before I even do that, we're going to talk about, hey, a little guy called Squarespace, who's our best friend.
Yep.
Best friend Squarespace. They're the all-in-one platform that makes it easy to create your own professional website.
And you can customize it, build it beautiful. It's awesome.
And they've got 24-hour support. And you can start a free trial. And if you decide you love it, you can enter the word zombie at checkout, and you'll get 10% off.
Yep. So thank you, Squarespace, for your support as always. And are we ready?
Mouthful of coffee. Yeah, let's do it.
I think that means you're ready.
Well, it means there will be more of those as we go. First up in the news, I don't know if I should be happy or sad that there's another allegorical film about a train ride coming from a Korean director because I fucking hated Snowpiercer.
I hated Snowpiercer as well.
But
There were things I liked about it, but mostly a lot of hate. There was just so many things that were just bothered me a lot about that particular film. But the reason why I put it in there was because my favorite pet virus is featured, which is the wonderful.
toxoplasmosis.
No,
Isn't that your favorite virus?
well, that too. But no, the MERS virus. It's
Oh yes,
base
the camel MERS.
the camel MERS virus is the catalyst for this whole film, and apparently there's not a prequel, but there's a first film in the series called Soul Station, which I think we had talked very briefly about a long time ago. But anyway, apparently the editing in this is incredible, and I might give it a go even if you don't.
Oh, of course. Oh, come on, AJ. Who are you talking to?
I know.
So yeah, that's what's it called?
This film,
Yeah. Pronounce
Train
that
to
for me.
Busan.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Busan Hang.
Oh, maybe I'm just looking at it. Might be, but this is what I'm looking at as the variety translation, maybe.
Yes, you're right. Busan, Train to Busan. Okay, awesome. Well, that we're gonna look at that, and it's gonna be fun someday.
Yep.
Next up, we've got some news out of Cannes, where it was announced that Martin Freeman is going to be playing a role in the upcoming full-length film version of Cargo, which was the short film that we have talked about on a couple of occasions. It came out of Australia about the dad
Yep.
who's just trying to get his son to safety.
It's a pretty disturbing little short film.
It's a super disturbing but also super touching short film that includes babies and zombies, but not in a way that's going to disturb H.A. Conrad.
It disturbs me in a different way, but very well done.
Yeah, it was cool. So if you get a chance, go check, look for it on YouTube. It's a good short film, and look for Martin Freeman doing a zombie movie. Long overdue.
Right, and also just to mention that the producer is Christina Satan, I think, is how you say her last name.
Hello.
But she was the person who produced The Babadook, which I don't know if you've ever seen, but it is my friend Derek's one of his favorite films, and it's terrifying. So
Wonderful.
go check it out if you have not.
Good stuff. Good times. And then lastly, America raises its beautiful head and spits forth a an insane pastor with a YouTube channel who
So many
is claim.
insane pastors to choose from, though. I don't know how
I
we just
know.
picked one,
Yeah.
but go
Well,
ahead.
this one is claiming that the zombie apocalypse is happening on Earth right now.
Mm.
And you know it's cool because a British newspaper picked it up as a story to be like, look what these idiots are doing in the US.
Right. Also has a YouTube video to show as his proof, which is great.
So he's combining scripture with and referring to events like the bath salts face eating thing from 2012,
Hmm.
saying like, look, it's all happening just like it says. And so yeah, watch out for that, you guys. We'll have links to that in the show notes. What's the guy's name, just in case people want to find him?
Pastor Begley, and that's
Paul Begley.
not to be confused with Ed Begley Jr. You know.
Right. Not related. Well, maybe they are. Maybe they're cousins.
But basically, he's saying that, quote, this is an actual manifestation of demonic spirits and people. What I'm talking about here, this is demon possession. End of quote.
It's a great quote. I wish there were more of those like that.
Oh, he's so many quotes in this, but I don't know if I can recommend this, but it is entertaining to say the least.
Yes. It's another sign of the end times, but not the ones that he's talking about.
Correct.
So I guess that's it. Little short roundup of news this week. Hopefully there'll be more with more movie updates coming up. Really want to find out more about the girl who brings gifts and World War Z 2, which I think is, as we mentioned a few weeks ago, isn't coming out until 2017. But still, I want to know.
Yep.
But anyway, on to I Am Legend. I feel like to start, we have to talk about the 1954, 54, 57, one of those, late 50s, mid to late 50s, the book by Matheson.
Mr. Matheson.
And it's very important to us because it was one of the guiding principles that led George Romero to do Night of the Living Dead in 1968.
Right.
And for the purposes of today, we're more interested in the things that were directly, remakes of it, in which, by which we mean, when did Omega Man get made?
6, I
74?
think. 74, 76. Easy,
71.
easy enough to find out.
71. So actually, really, well, pretty close to when Night of the Living Dead came out, but this one is, supposedly much closer. So the book I Am Legend follows the story of the last man on Earth and his struggles. He's lost his family to a pandemic that has swept the world, and everybody else also, except for just a couple of really annoying people like his old neighbor, Bill Cortman, and then a posse of people that he hangs out with who all seem to
Wait,
have...
you mean in Omega Man, right? Not Last Man on Earth.
Not Last Man on Earth, I mean I Am Legend, the book.
Oh, okay. Cool. Just being clear.
Just to really quickly summarize that, it's about a guy who's like, everybody has died, and he is under attack. In fact, in the book, his wife tried to kill him.
Yeah, she
after
came.
turned
She
into
came
a
back
vampire.
because they didn't realize that was going on.
So he has been persecuted, and so for much of the book, he's our, hero, and he's fighting persecution at terrible, overwhelming odds because everybody's out to get him.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a flip in the book and in Omega Man. Actually, I don't know if it really is that well spelled out in Omega Man, but the book flips you from thinking that Robert Neville, who's the lead, is the hero, kind of, to he's the bad guy.
Right.
So I guess I'll just leave it at that. But that's kind of the main thrust of the story, is to make you question your hero, I suppose.
Right, and the book, as the infected or whatever you want, vampires, whatever you want to call them, as you see more and more of them, they're evolving in the book. And So the premise that he's kind of using to kill them, that they're not, that they don't have any feelings and all that kind, is turned on its head, which is part of what makes him the monster.
Right. And that is consistent through all the versions
Right.
of basically what we're talking about today. So then, yeah, Omega Man comes around in 71 and Charlton Heston gets that lead. It's a very significant film because it has one of the first on screen interracial Nookie
Yep.
sessions. Whoopi Goldberg subsequently talked to Charlton Heston on her talk show about it, and then he like went in and gave her a big smooch in 1996, which was weird.
Who wouldn't
Charlton
want a
Heston,
big smooch from Charlton Heston?
yeah,
Yeah.
apparently she was cool with it. Charlton Heston, this movie's difficult to watch today. I mean,
It's
it's not
tough.
that bad. It's not that bad. It's not like it's not terrible, but it's just
The effects are
his
pretty
gadgets.
rough, and his
The effects are
gadgets,
bad.
yeah.
His gadgets are wow. I mean, maybe they're just like cutting edge 1971, but like
Part of that makes me laugh though to watch it. I mean, and I think that's part of the fun of watching this
yeah.
film is that this was sort of the vision about what it would be. I don't know, like his survival.
This movie is definitely about like vilifying
Yeah.
technology, the atom, and in this case, it's germ warfare that has killed all the people and created the vampire race. And so he is holding on to technology, and so he's got all these like tech gadgets, like three TVs and giant flashlights that could attach to his guns. So that's Charlton Heston's Neville, and he's kind of unlikable. He's not a very likable guy, I think.
No, he's not.
Like, even when that's the difference, I guess, between Omega Man and the book I Am Legend is there's not a point where I'm like rooting for Charlton Heston really because he's just really smug. I feel like some of it's tongue in cheek or like with a nod to the camera because he's like I'm a narcissist at one point when he tells his new friends because he has this video camera on himself all the time in his house. And I'm like, yeah, that's been pretty apparent the whole
Yeah, no,
time. But
you
I
didn't
guess,
really need to say it out loud, but okay, if you feel the need, go for it.
yeah. And I'm not sure if the direction he was getting was off or what, or if that's just like Heston's what he does.
Well, I think that to me that was part of where they were going with the film in order to make him the bad guy, where you're kind of not rooting for him to make it, and they just wanted to make it abundantly clear. But I think part of what the book does a little bit more is you understand why a little bit more of the motivation behind why he is just going out and destroying these, and that he really does feel as if this is his duty in some way. You understand where his motivation more so than I feel like Charlton Heston or Charlton Heston's character Neville.
Yeah. In the other two versions of Robert Neville that we're talking about today, both of them were family men. Both of them lost their family. But I don't think Charlton Heston ever talks about having a
No,
family
no. So that's a big piece I think that's missing.
to soften him.
That's missing
Yeah,
from Omega Man.
because he just goes straight in talking about the vampires as vermin, even though he has like the clear upper hand throughout this entire film.
Right.
Like they're out in the street just screaming and hooping and hollering, and then he'll like lean out his window and shoot a bunch of them, and then go back inside and drink scotch. Like it's almost laughable the relationship that he has with his quote unquote tormentors or the evil.
Their
Ultimately,
makeup is pretty bad though, so
but
I
yeah,
can see this a little bit.
yeah. Um, so that film, not to dwell on it too long, we're really going to talk about the Will Smith version today. But that film, he let's see, he finds a bunch of other humans and like a lot actually, like I don't even know, 20 kids
Yep.
and an adult woman and another guy, which is not really clear to me why, since there's another woman and another guy, why he has the romance with the woman
Right.
who's like, you're the last man on earth. I'm like, what about Dutch? Like
He's there. Don't you
he
see him?
seems like an eligible bachelor, and you
And a
already
little
knew
bit
him.
more
Like
eligible than you. So, yeah.
he's not like 30 years older than you.
Right.
But either way, okay, just that aside. Um, and so there like a redemption of Robert Neville other than the fact that he still tries to save Lisa even though she's turned. I assume that that's
I
the
think
only
that's the
redemption.
only redemption piece. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty light on redemption.
Yep.
And there isn't much of a an evolution. There's a lot of evolutionary and revolutionary rhetoric from the vampires because they're a mouthy bunch. They
Mm-hmm.
talk a lot, and they're just like, "We're not gonna harness technology anymore, and that's bad. But we're gonna build catapults because that's
That's
okay."
all right.
Um, so yeah, movie ends. The kids and Dutch drive off into the world, and hopefully with Neville's blood, they're gonna be fine.
Right. Um, which brings us to the Will Smith 2007 I Am Legend.
One last point on Charlton Heston. Sorry.
Please stop.
One last point. One
Okay.
last point. Because we're about to go into the 2007 version.
Mm-hmm.
Every scene where it's Charlton Heston in the beginning of Omega Man driving, there are people in the streets.
Yep.
There's cars driving in the background. There
Yep.
are pedestrians. They're not like super apparent,
But they're there,
but
and
they're
you can
there.
see them.
Yeah.
You
So
do not
that's it.
get the sense of abandoned LA.
Abandoned New York, however, looks pretty cool.
Abandoned New York looks amazing and a little terrifying.
Yeah, I kept looking at all the grass that was coming out of the street. Like, how did they do that?
They brought plants from Florida.
Oh, you actually okay? Fine. I thought it was like AstroTurf or
Some of
something.
it was, but they brought stuff up from Florida apparently to line the streets like that, which also is super impressive. I'm sure some of it was like filled in and things like that, but just the fact that they were able to film on some of the I mean that's we're talking about like Fifth Avenue near Grand Central. We're talking some
Mhm.
major places down by South Street Seaport and the Brooklyn Bridge,
Isn't there there's a Times Square element,
and there's a Times Square element too.
which I can't imagine is easy to empty of people at any point.
Right. Although they did, I feel like for Vanilla Sky they closed that down. They usually when they do shots like that, it's super early in the morning, like at like 3 or 4 in the morning or something like that, and they
Okay.
do block it off. So, but still, those are areas that are never really fully empty. So you would have to do something like that, and that is massively expensive from
Yeah.
so many different angles, security, angry New Yorkers, all that kind of thing.
Naked guitarist.
Yes.
Um,
And I think at one point Will Smith actually apologized to the denizens of New York for the disruption.
I'm
that
sure it
this
was.
It's interesting though because this was filmed at a time when New York has built in a few different tax breaks and all this other stuff to bring more productions into the New York area because for a really long time it was just too expensive, which is why you were seeing, and this is still, I think, probably the case in for a lot of shows. There's a lot of stuff that's filmed in Vancouver and Canada and things like that, and even though they take place in New York, but in the last few years they have tried to bring all that kind of stuff back to New York. So
Hmm.
you have the Americans that films here. That's the first, like constant television show other than Law and Order. There
Yeah, I
wasn't
was gonna say.
there wasn't a ton that was being filmed here, and but for film productions, obviously Marvel is doing a lot of that, and you see when things are filming in New York, it's really funny because it's like you always have these points where people just kind of walk through a set, even though they're not supposed to. So you catch that sometimes in the bigger productions, you'll see somebody kind of wandering through, like, what on earth is going on here? So, anyway, I digress. But this is the thing. This is definitely in New York, and the effect is pretty cool. It's very, to me, it's not quite as haunting as what happened in 28 Days Later, but it's still pretty crazy.
I think part of that not quite as haunting comes from the fact that they've made it overrun with
Right.
nature,
Yeah. So there's still
and which is a
nature.
little hard to believe
Yeah.
because it's only supposed to have been 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't know that maybe in 3 years grass will grow down the middle of Fifth Avenue.
Right. Haven't you ever seen In a World Without Humans? It happens pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Do you
Okay.
know what I'm talking about?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
It's not very good, but it is kind of hilarious. And it's the guy with the sort of the voiceover in a world without humans. And he basically takes different metro areas and talks about how long it would take for different things to take over.
Yeah, I
And then
guess you know that.
they show progression of that. So you should check it out.
All right. Well, it looks wild and overgrown, and it's pretty awesome. And we're introduced to Will Smith in his in a Mustang, which we never see again after this initial sequence, which is a little weird. He's just drive like that's his hunting car, maybe.
Well, it's
It's
an
kind of
homage to Omega Man, so and that
yeah,
drive
yeah,
around, I think that's the point of that. And you see him with his trusty companion Sam, the German Shepherd.
yeah. And there was a dog that appears in I Am Legend, the book too, which serves as Robert Neville's only companion until he meets the evolved vampires. But
Right.
that dog doesn't live.
The
In this
the
case,
dog never lives, and that's
the
horrible.
dog. Yeah, I know
This
it's
was
messed up.
particularly heartbreaking though, because you really the companionship that the dog provides also makes this Robert Neville version a lot more human
Oh,
and
totally. Yeah, he's
lovable.
got someone. Yeah, yeah. Not only has he lost his wife and child, he's got this like cute. Like some German shepherds aren't so cute. This one is just like really cute. They have a good working relationship, as in this dog is very well trained and helps him.
This dog was so cute that apparently Will Smith tried to adopt it from its trainer after the filming, and the trainer just wouldn't part with this dog. And I can totally see why, because this dog is endearing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so the dog is a great way to round out his character. So this movie is told through a lot of flashbacks, not that many actually, just three or four. And
I actually really liked how they edited that piece of it because the flashbacks gave you enough of the backstory and enough context. And I
hmm
feel like if they hadn't done that, it would have just been honestly a little bit more Omega Man like, in that you're just kind of seeing just uninterrupted parts of him hanging out. And I think that
yeah,
gave it enough. It just changed it up a little bit to make it more interesting.
there was the one flashback in Omega Man that shows him like crashing in the helicopter.
Right, but not it wasn't used in the way that they use it in this film in the storytelling sense.
Yeah, and I should also point out there might be times here where I don't know where my vision doesn't jive with HA's because I watched the director's cut of I Am Legend, which I had never seen before with the alternate ending. So when I in the version I watched, the three or four flashbacks were kind of spread out throughout the film.
Right. These are still
Like,
spread out,
okay,
but
yeah,
the
I was
film
just
is just
checking.
a little tighter, that's all.
Yeah,
I've seen both, although I didn't watch the alternate ending. I didn't watch that more recently. I watched the theatrical cut.
yeah. Well, we'll get there. Also, this movie opens with. It's kind of interesting. Like even in before the credits, before anything, like as soon as the film starts, there's sound. Like there's a radio show or a TV. It's a TV program, and it suddenly it gradually and suddenly at the same time. Then you see what's her name, the British actress, talking
Emma
about how she's
Thompson.
cured cancer, Emma Thompson, and that's it. That's her whole appearance in the movie, which I thought was actually pretty awesome.
The other thing that I really liked about that piece is that they don't immediately go into what we've seen with a lot of zombie and contagion films, which is typically when they use this device to give some context, it also talks about how whatever virus mutates and things like that. They don't do that here. They just talk about the positive piece and just kind of leave it right there. And
Yeah,
then everything else kind of joins in. But I liked how they use this because she's being interviewed about how she's cured cancer, and it's this very hopeful thing. And the music obviously is telling us, the background music is telling us something different. But
yeah, and the hard cut to future New York
right,
is also
right,
telling us
that's the
something
hard cut.
different.
But I liked how they edited that piece. I thought it was very clever.
Yeah, that was. You're right. It's an interesting way to introduce this. I feel like as soon as you've seen a preview, or if you've heard of this, you know basically what the premise is, what's happening. So maybe you don't have to guide the audience around by holding their hand the whole time. And we do get all the information we need through the flashbacks as the film goes on.
Right.
And honestly, not to keep harping on Charlton Heston, he's not around to defend himself anymore. But I just feel like Will Smith's performance throughout this film is 100 times what Charlton Heston did for Omega Man.
Yeah.
It's he's at the same time he still has the same sort of character flaw of pride, or yeah, I guess it's basically pride, where he's like, this is me, I'm taking care of business, uh, and the experiments that he's doing on the Dark Seekers, I think they end up calling them.
Yep.
Um, he doesn't talk about them as being inhuman. Even when he's doing his medical experiments, he still refers to them as human trials. But whereas Charlton Heston's calling them vermin.
Well, he does, except he has no problem with the fact that, and we see this when Anna comes into the basement to see all the ones that have died.
Yeah.
And he's very much just like, oh, I have to do this. This is what science is, and if I'm going to save the world. Or, I mean, maybe he does feel upset about it, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like she's kind of the person to take that perspective, and he might start seeing it that way after her reaction to seeing all the dead trials that have taken place.
Yeah, definitely the wall of the dead photos plays a bigger part in the alternate ending than
Okay.
in the theatrical one. But so another good thing that this film does is paint his descent into madness. Charlton Heston version, he talks to his reflection or to his image in the TV, and he talks to like a statue a lot. But Will Smith is like set up all
He
the
has set up a whole scenario
mannequins, yeah, in a scenario exactly.
in a video store, which is also kind of funny now,
Yeah,
since they don't really exist anymore.
yeah. But what a resource in the apocalypse when you've got power to watch DVDs.
True, true.
But yeah, so it's funny to think about, like, he's placed all these mannequins and then he keeps going back in there and playing out this whole thing. Uh, and then like his days are it's interesting the way they show what he's up to other than pull-ups and doing some running. He goes to like Central Park or a park, and he has a farm basically, which is very cool. And then he goes and sits up on that aircraft carrier on the pier with a notebook.
The Intrepid.
And you the aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
That's a really nice scene where he's standing on top of an SR-71 shooting golf
Yeah,
balls.
that's the USS Intrepid. So that's the museum.
Okay, I assumed it was a museum
Yep.
based on all the aircraft.
Yep.
I don't think SR-71s ever took off of aircraft carriers. But yeah, there's just a lot of interesting little clips and scenes of Will Smith's Robert Neville doing his thing. He also spends a lot of time in his lab working on his rats and figuring out if he can do human trials.
Yeah, and then of course time spent with the dog, including exercising with the dog. The dog's on the treadmill. Like, even I will own up to the fact that I had to fast forward through the dog, the sad
Really?
dog scenes, because it was really hard for me to watch it the first time, and I just couldn't do it a second time. It's a little too heartbreaking for me.
Thing I noticed this time around watching it was that the dog actually saves his life, even in that fight
Yep.
where the dog is bitten.
Yep.
Like, it manages to kill the zombie dog that's fighting it, and like launches himself at the
Other one,
third
yep.
one, which I had not realized, or maybe I had, and I don't know. It was cool.
Yep. So that dog's pretty awesome, and so, and I mean, just how much they were showing, you knew that they were going to take that away from him, which is the catalyst for him losing his mind just a bit.
Well, he's already losing it. I mean, every time he goes into a flashback, even when the dog is there, or like the first time that his alarm goes off when the sun's going down, and you just kind of like he keeps going off into La La Land.
Well, he is, but the dog brings him back and grounds him, at least the little bit of grounding that he has. So the minute that the dog's away and he's the one that has to like kill it, pretty horrible. And you know that it's gonna. I didn't really, when I was first watching this, I didn't really expect it to take the direction that it did. I didn't think that there would actually be true survivors, because I wasn't sure what they were going to do in terms of what happened in the book or not, you know?
Oh yeah,
Um,
right.
so I didn't know if it was going to be some sort of, different type of infected that rescue him or something like that. So that was kind of cool when you think he's going to just. I wasn't sure where they were going to go with it, which was nice.
So what did you think of the infected as there in this film?
I will say that the effects at this point look pretty dated, and sometimes it's just, especially with the dogs, they look. I feel like we have come so far with these types of effects that, of course, anything that was cutting edge then is going to look dated. I still liked it. I thought that they looked, but they looked a little video game character like to me. Even how they
Okay.
move, and they're not fully believable. But I feel like at the time, this was like, ooh, how are they going to do this? And I feel like it was a little more convincing to some extent. And also watching it in a big theater, as opposed to on a little screen, was a little, certain things stood out, but you were willing to suspend disbelief just because it was kind of like a cool concept. But a lot of them look very similar just in the bodies and things like that, and they play a few different tricks so that they just they you see like the backs of them and things like that, and they're moving pretty quickly, so I don't know. But I think for the purposes of this film, they did the trick. They seem terrifying, fast, strong, and just overwhelming in their numbers and how they run.
Yeah, I like them a lot. This film relies on jump scares, or
Yep.
at least it hits you with some jump scares. Um, it's a much scarier film than Omega Man, which is more just like funny.
Well, no, those whatever they're infected are, the makeup effects on those are just not scary at all. They're just really silly. So,
they just look sick.
yeah,
I thought that the effects stood up pretty well. The only place and the only times when it seemed to fall apart was when you got too close in on their eyes. I felt like their eyes looked a little fake, but I liked it a lot. And I liked the fact that they were like hyperventilating all the
yeah,
time.
that's cool.
Apparently, they'd tried to shoot this film with actors to play the infected at first, but they were about to pass out because they had to keep breathing so hard. So they replaced them with they got the actors to do motion capture and then brought in just the CGI version of them, which is what we ended up with. And I think that's probably a good call.
Yeah,
And yeah, I think it still stands up today. The dogs, like you said, maybe looked a little shady, but the, I really liked the way the infected story kind of unfolds here too.
I also
It's
liked how they overused the scream a little bit more, and I actually, in doing research for for the show today, didn't realize that the lead singer of Faith No More is the person that they used for those sound effects, apparently,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is, he's pretty good at screaming, so that was cool. But I did like how they have almost like a. I hate to say it, but their grunts and their different sounds communicate, especially with the alpha. They're the way that they use that, they are definitely communicating with each other, and I liked how they were doing that.
I thought there was one scene where they sounded just like pigs
Yeah,
screaming.
yeah,
I guess it does actually tip its cap to Omega Man when it introduces the Anna and Ethan. Is it Ethan characters?
yeah. The kid.
Yeah, after Sam the dog dies and he tries to kill himself, they it's a little too convenient that they're out at night, like they're not holed up,
Yeah,
and they come and manage to save his life.
they do, but in some senses, they're the ones that lead everybody back because he's been so careful just with all of his timing and alarms and things like that. The whole point of him having his base is that the infected don't know where he lives.
Right.
Because otherwise they could pretty easily break in. And he even tries to kind of say that to to Anna, which who doesn't really get it.
I could barely understand him. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think if they hadn't brought them in at that point, it would just have gotten boring. I liked how they would just cut to the chase with that. But agreed, it was kind of weird that they're hanging out at night. They know better.
This is, I guess, the only version out of these three that where they don't know where Robert Neville lives, because in the book and in the Omega Man, they like come to his house every
Yep,
night
and torture
and
him.
try to mess with him and try to get in there. but are basically ineffectual since they've upped the ante so much in 2007 and made these things able
So
to like
powerful. Yeah.
bend metal and push cars around. So yeah, they made it so he, they can't know where he lives, otherwise it will be over. And even with all of his defenses, they don't stand up to a prolonged assault.
Right.
So the characters Anna and Ethan that are introduced, Anna brings also some religion with her.
Yeah. I'm not so wild
Um,
about that, but okay.
well, it comes full circle because you also see him praying with his family before they
I know.
get into the helicopter and get blown up. So we can assume at least that he's lost his faith. When it certainly, yeah, it comes down to that when he's arguing with Anna about saying that God has spoken to her because the world is more quiet now.
Yeah, and also that. All right, so this is the piece that just troubled me a little bit, which is she is telling him apparently there's a community, a sanctuary in Bethel, Vermont, where there are uninfected people. There are people who have immunity, and when he asks her how she knows that it's there, she's like, "Because I know, because God told me." But if you're living as he's been living for 3 years doing this stuff, I can understand why he's going to be a little skeptical and not want to leave what he's figured out how to survive. And he's still looking for the cure and that kind of thing. Like, he can't really bring his whole lab with him and hope that just because she knows that there is a little community up there.
That is a good argument. The one that he makes comes out a little less persuasive, where he's just like, "This is my site.
Right.
I can still stop this."
Right.
And I'm like, "Really?" Because it looks like this already happened, and you are,
This is done.
yeah.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, of course, he does have a shot at stopping it if he can bring back fully transformed, infected to humans, make them human again. He does actually have a shot at doing what he claims, which is maybe, I don't know. They've gone through such a transformation; it does seem a little bit far fetched that he can reverse it. But hey, I'll go with it. Now, I think this is where the alternate ending or the longer director's cut version differs, because in the theatrical version that you watched, did they ever leave the house the day that he wakes up and they've like stitched him up, and does he just hang out with them in the house all
Yeah,
day?
he just hangs out with them, and then it turns out he gets all freaked out because they followed him home. So it's
How?
all pretty much, they watch Shrek together. He gets pissed because they ate his bacon,
Yeah.
you know.
Does he have a realization that he has to put the zombie on ice at some point?
No, they don't explain that really. They just show her on ice.
Ah,
So that's
okay.
definitely something that's different.
So yeah, when in the longer version they go out to like go fishing. Well, first they go back to the scene of the ambush, and they find like he's looking at where the taxi had fallen off the bridge and the cables. He's like, "This is my stuff. Like these are my trap materials. They can't do this. They're not smart enough." And she's like, "How do you know?" Whatever. And then they go to a museum and go fishing because he's got like a koi pond,
Yep, the AMNH.
and he has the realization that he's been cooking his components or whatever, and he's like, "I need to find ice." And then they go back, which to me then introduces something of a plot hole. Although I'm not entirely sure how the infected tracked them to his house. When I originally watched this way back in the day, I assumed it was because he's putting vinegar on his steps and like he puts them off with a scent. But I'm not sure if they actually didn't just follow the car the night before, but didn't have time to attack.
I
Either
I
way,
think they probably followed the car, but still, yeah,
yeah,
plot hole. You're right.
potential plot hole. Like the fact that they've come and gone, and he could have checked his scent covering stuff at least. But either way, like I think that part of the extended version is nice. It adds a little bit more of like he's still trying to figure out what happened to him the day before, because it does seem so far fetched that suddenly the infected are like setting traps for him and messing with his head so much, like pulling one of his mannequins out into the street.
Yeah. And
Like that actually,
basically mimicking the whole trap that he had set for the most recent test subject.
yeah, which suggests that they've been watching him during the day, which I'm not sure
How that
if
works.
they, yeah, because it seems like when he walks into their lair with the dog early on, they don't seem active. I mean,
No.
they're all standing there breathing hard, but they're not like looking around.
No. They're just kind of hanging out in stasis somehow.
Yeah. Either way, so I really like that whole ambush part, other than the fact that the dog, ends up not making it out of there. I just feel like there's a lot of stress involved. This film does a lot of good stuff with like light
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that you feel it kind of going down, which isn't something we typically think about much here on Reanimated because zombies are always out. But there's a nice tension that comes
With the dogs and the light.
with and dusk, yeah,
Yep.
in vampire material. So it's kind of fun and it adds a lot of tension there.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a just being a person who lives in New York, the one of the parts with the dogs that, if you've ever been around that area in Manhattan, there is so much coverage with buildings and things like that that it would be pretty hard for that, light comes through and that kind of thing, but there's definitely lots of pockets of shadow. So they kind of had to play with that a little bit, I suspect, to make that work, but still, it was fine.
Yeah.
And even him roaming around New York like that, if they can actually live in sort of the shadows of buildings, which it seems, unless it's just like me not interpreting like how dark it is during this dusk scene, if they can actually do that, there's probably ways they could be out during the day, which is how I kind of saw it in my mind.
Yeah.
Like
There's
how they could be watching him basically. But you're right.
mhm.
Like I mean it's tough to think that when they're in their little den breathing hard.
But it also lends credence to this concept that they have evolved or that
Mm,
they're changing. It's a little tough. It's a bit of a stretch to think that they have changed this much in the 3 years
right.
since the infection broke out. But whatever, like obviously the infection broke out and evolved them into something else or changed them into something almost overnight. So is it so difficult to think that they could change again within a few years?
Mm.
I guess not. But to jump back the other to the differences between the two versions, the big attack starts, I guess. He just realizes like he's having a big yelling fight with Anna about the fact that he has no hope,
Right.
essentially, and and then he hears them attacking and sets off his claymores, and then it's a pretty tense fight. Good jump scares here too, where he goes upstairs, realizes that they're in the house, probably doesn't have a gun, and they're on him and dragging him around by their teeth.
Yep. And then the alpha. So this is the part where the effects, just when they're up close, I think you're right, is the part where it's tough. And even just watching them move around the house just looks a little too two dimensional to me.
Hmm.
But it's still effective, and the fear is pretty effective. I also really like the part where the alpha is like, or is it the alpha? It's not the alpha, but it's one of them that it's pulling down the ceiling to let the others in.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. Cool idea.
No. Yeah. I thought honestly that they looked pretty good even doing that. Um. It's yeah.
They're a little plastic, and the only
Okay.
reason that I noticed it is just more if you compare it to some of the effects now, yeah, it's just makes me want to see that done over or something like that. But it's still fine. It didn't make me just be like, oh, that's terrible. Like it's not that cheesy. It's a little dated. That's all.
There were some rumors of a sequel being made, but I don't think Will Smith would do it.
Well, they talked in 2012 about a sequel or a prequel, and it would feature Will Smith. I don't think anything came of that. And then there was something else that was talked about, which would be like a totally separate installment. So it may still be in the mix, but you know how these things go.
Yeah, there was something about a script for an entirely different film that then the producers were like, "This sounds a lot like I Am Legend too."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll have to see if that ever comes to light. As it is in the theatrical version, how does that end? It ends with a grenade and like the girl and the kid escaping to Canada or Vermont or whatever, right?
It's Vermont, but I will tell you that's definitely not Vermont.
Fair enough.
And I thought that as I was watching it, and I looked it up, and in fact, it's New Jersey.
Oh, Vermont and New Jersey have a lot in common.
So anyway, but they were supposed to be in Bethel, Vermont.
But so he gets them out like a trash chute and then waits for the infected to get into his plexiglass place and then explodes himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's like no from a moral perspective, for the Robert Neville's character never backs down and never acknowledges his culpability to this like new form of creature.
Well, I think he does a little bit. Like, I think he realizes why there's a little bit of a realization about why the alpha is trying to get in there, but he doesn't get to the point where he's going to give up the test subject. You know what I mean?
Does the alpha make the
No, he doesn't do.
butterfly?
He does not make the butterfly, but there's this thing where he's looking at her and he looks at the alpha, and so there. I think you're supposed to draw some conclusion, but it's not as clear as it is in the ending that you watched.
Okay. Yeah, because yeah, well, like I just said, the alpha at some point after banging its head into the plexiglass makes a filthy butterfly shape on the glass, and then Robert Neville just like wheels the cart out into like reverse inject takes out the drip, starts reversing the process on the zombie lady, and then wheels her out into the main room, and the alpha stops the other creatures from attacking him. And then he collects her, and they leave. They leave everybody alive,
Right.
which is kind of insane. And there's a lot of like shared looks between Neville and the alpha, and the alpha's looking at the wall of dead portraits. It features a lot in the background, and there's like this whole unspoken but a little heavy-handed nonetheless feeling of like, what have you done, you monster?
Yep.
And Will Smith is looking very ashamed of himself. And then the film ends with the three of them driving across a bridge, which I thought were all blown up into the unknown.
Yep. Yeah, that's a pretty good question. Where the hell was that bridge?
Why not just drive north along? Can't you just drive out of New York north without having to cross a bridge?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Really?
If you're on Manhattan, there's really not a ton of. There are not connectors other than bridges. Well, I guess you can. But I would imagine that all those ways out would have been blocked off.
I mean, if they're going to try and do a quarantine, you might as well not half-ass it and leave one bridge open.
Right.
But of course, we know that the quarantine didn't work.
And it fell apart. So probably that bridge is left over.
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, very different endings, I think. Obviously, one of them, Will Smith, is dead. The other one, he's alive. And yeah, I think the one that I watched, the director, I don't know if it's director's cut or just the alternate ending, there is more of a open acknowledgement of the kind of sentiment that is in the book I Am Legend, where he has to come to terms with the fact that he is the bad guy.
Right.
And I don't know that the theatrical version really has that.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it has hints of it, definitely hints, but nothing to the level that the alternate ending does.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't have an epiphany, and it's never said out loud. So, I think that it's implied, but not. He never really gets there full throttle.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it doesn't need it. I don't know, but it's a good movie in and of itself. Like they just they do a really good job of making him be alone in a scary place, surrounded by scary things. There's also a scene in the alternate ending of like that lion family, like frolicking as they drive out of town. That was a little much. I was like, okay, yeah, the lions are happy now. Great.
It was still a good film. I enjoyed watching it again. This is fun.
Oh, me too. Yeah. It was. It would be fun also to watch a prequel that detailed more the breakdown of society in a place like New York.
True.
A la what Fear the Walking Dead was supposed to do for Los Angeles.
Well, this is the thing. Like, I think, and this is something that I think you have to consider. I guess it depends on how fast whatever this was, whatever mutation was happening. I feel like it wouldn't, I mean, and obviously this is for theatrical purposes. It was supposed to happen pretty quickly. I just don't know that I see people getting organized well enough to screen people, to get them out, to come up with a screen to get them out of the city that quickly. Because they make a big deal when Will Smith's character Robert is leaving with his wife and child. They have these crazy eye scanners that are supposed to tell whether you're virus free or not, and his wife's has a false
Right.
positive. And I would imagine that they would have tested her like 5 times as opposed to just one more time to make sure she was okay. But okay, I just don't see people coming up with the technology quickly enough to decide that there should be a quarantine. And the way the world works these days, just with everybody, I mean, we're very connected globally. And so you would have people probably traveling to different parts of the world before you even knew there was a problem.
Yeah.
So I just feel like that's unrealistic. And even then, I think it might have been unrealistic. But of course, this is a film, so we're gonna give you that. But in terms of New York, I mean, I just think it's almost impossible to shut the city down completely. There's always going to be pockets where people are going to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of bridges in New York,
There's a
man.
lot of bridges, and blowing up those bridges, I don't know that there'd be anything really left. And I feel like somebody did an analysis of this film just about what how they do what is good science and what is bad science and all that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I think one of the criticisms is that the whole Brooklyn Bridge, everything would have fallen down, So,
Oh
and
yeah.
there's that kind of thing. But I just feel like it would be complete and utter chaos. And ultimately, yeah, watching this film and just sort of seeing some of that stuff, I'll admit it gets a little nerve wracking as a person who actually lives here because it's just an
Sure.
insane number of people.
Yeah. Well, if it's not this, it's asteroids or aliens.
Oh
You've got a
no,
lot
no,
of
no, no.
problems.
I mean, you and I have talked about this before. Just the whole, the different that crazy like map about what the best places to survive. And like New York is ground zero. New York's not gonna gonna do so well in a scenario like this. So,
Well, so we should probably review Contagion next.
oh sure,
No, but otherwise, it is an amazing film just for the way it details the spread of a
right.
really virulent pathogen.
It's pretty creepy though. Oh, it's so gross.
But yeah, so I guess that's kind of it. Do we have anything else we want to talk about with I Am Legend or Omega Man?
No, I think that's the only thing I would say is that some of the bits of trivia I've been coming up with here is because I was watching this on Amazon, and they have something very similar to pop-up video, which I don't know if you recall. A very long time ago, they used to do
Hmm.
this on VH1, and so as you're watching the film, if you accidentally move the cursor, these little pop-ups happen where they talk about these different things,
That's cool.
which is kind of cool. It's so distracting. I think they need to figure out a little way to make it a little less in your face because it's not clear how it's controlled. But it is kind of a cool thing for anybody who enjoys like the making of films and things like that. I think it's a nice idea. So
I've always liked directors' commentaries
yeah,
and
no,
the
that's what it's
insights that
like.
those kinds of give you. Yeah. So yeah, that pretty much does it for our review of I Am Legend, Omega Man, I Am Legend, mostly I Am Legend 2007, but we did talk about the other two, much to HA's discomfort. I kept droning on about Omega Man.
It's more
Uh,
it's more because it's just sort of a tedious thing for me to watch, even though it's silly.
It was quite tedious. So yeah, join us again next time when we get together for a slightly late, but also sooner than we do most of our Walking Dead reviews. Review of season 2 of Fear the Walking Dead. We're gonna start digging into some of those episodes, and we might do the whole season. We might do it
Segments.
in chunks. Yeah. So we're gonna do the first two next time, Monster and We All Fall Down, which aired in April. So get back together with us then. And in the meantime, tell them where you can find us.
If you'd like to tweet at us, it's reanimatedpcast on the Twitters. And you can also email us, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com.
That's right.
And check out the site, reanimatedpodcast.com.
Oh, so good. Okay. So, yeah, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Excellent. Ciao.